Hi guys, I'm Mike Dittmer. I'm the kind of the Midwest regional instructor for the NWFA. I've been a contractor for about 30 years. I've been doing it for about 30 years. I've had crews up to 10 guys that have worked for me over the years. As the boss of the crews, you always try to increase your employees' skill sets, to let them to do a better job, to take the $10 an hour guy, to get them to make $30 or $40 an hour for you. So for the most part, when we do new installations, we'll run the floor wild over the vents, because the problem is the tin guys that do the vents, they don't necessarily put the vents in aesthetically pleasing locations for the customers. So like, we've been in hallways before where you look down the hallway, and if you put the vent where the tin knocker had the pipe come out at, you'd have one here, then down 6 more feet, you'd have one off a ½ inch, then 6 more feet down, you'd have one at the same spot, then down from there, you'd have one in closer to the wall by like a ½ inch. So what we try to do is we try to look at the vents as kind of an aesthetic element of your floor job, so that when you look against a wall, all the vents line up nice and straight. Along, typically, your people's eyes will follow the board. And so we'll line it up straight on a board or close to one spot that's parallel with the walls, so all the vents look lined up. Or if you have a window, a lot of the architects that we work for, they like things symmetrical. So if the vent is off center by 2 inches in the center of the window, they'll want me to put it in the center of the window. So if you drop a plumb line in the center of the window down to the floor, the vent is going to be centered on that window. So it looks pretty. Or if you have a fireplace, and this is just something 2 weeks ago, the vent on one side of the hearth was 2 inches away, and on the other side of the hearth, it was 4 inches away. So when you looked at the hearth and the vents, it didn't balance, it didn't look good. So we adjusted the one in, we adjusted the other out, so they looked balanced, so they looked symmetrical. So what we came up with years ago was we did a big project. It was a hand-scraped walnut floor. We had 14 vents to put in. They were 6 by 12s, egg crate style. And I had to come up with a way that we could do a template, like you do with the plywood, that I could show the $10 an hour guy, and this is 10 years ago, how he could do a template by himself, and how he could cut in the vent by himself without me having to do it. And so I was teaching him a way so he could increase his skill set and do a good job, quality job the customer's going to be happy with. And then I could, and then me as the boss could earn more money too. But he could do it quickly and efficiently, and he could feel confident in doing a good job. So we thought about it, we played around with some ideas, and so this was really, we had tried the plywood thing, but he had a hard time of cutting the straight lines out with the saber saw or on the table saw and getting the corners to be perfect. We had tried that, and that really didn't work out well. So, like, what else can we do to come up with a quick way that he could do it? So what we thought of is we cut strips of plywood, and you could cut them anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches wide, depending upon how you want them to be. And we usually your vents are 3/4 of an inch thick. So when we cut the plywood, we used 3/8 inch plywood. So you do sandwich the 2 layers together, you've got 3/4 of an inch of a template. So what we did is it's kind of like a pinwheel. Most of the vents, if you look, and this is one of the things you need to pay attention to, they're typically tapered. Typically the top is your widest, and then your bottom of your groove is a little bit tapered. So when we would do the template, we'd always put it down like that. So we have it completely compact around our vent. So then we take another set of the plywood strips, and you could vary the width of the plywood. I think Jimmy was here earlier, and he's like, what if you're close to the wall? The vents are all close to the wall. So if you can get the router to fit in, you could cut 1-inch strips. Get the router to fit in and get the router to set on that. The narrower the strip, the more careful you have to be with routing and route in the floor. So the 2-inch to 3-inch was a good size, because 2-inch always typically fit up against the wall, because usually we're doing it before base and shoe, and that's what we came up with, the size that worked. And so then what we would do is we just take the next layer, and we're not going to use the heat gun glue gun here, but we put the next layer right on top of it with the corners alternating to give us a little bit more of an interlocking pattern. And so we'd come up with the interlocking pattern, so now we've got it wrapped twice with our blocks. With that top layer, we make sure that that top layer of plywood is flush. We use our fingers to make sure it's flush with that bottom layer, because we know that it's tapered, that bottom groove is tapered in. So we always make sure before we glue it up, we'd make sure that it's flush with the outside of that bottom layer. So we take the heat glue all the way around, or before these glue guns were out, we just had a 20 gauge brad nailer, pin nailer, and we just lay it up this. We have it all set around. We do like 4 or 5 nails in each corner to make sure you hold it tight. And after the glue sets or after the nails are put in, we would take the corners, trim them off with a saber saw and a table saw, and we have a template. So within 10 or 15 minutes, you can make a template to do any size vents. And I know most of the vent manufacturers, if you ask them, you call them up, they'll have one laser cut made exclusively for that size vent, and they charge anywhere from to $20 to $40 depending upon the manufacturer. But you can just make them up yourself. And also what's good about it is if anybody has done any of this before, you route it around. Sometimes the router hits a nail that you have in the wrong spot. The router jumps, and it wrecks a $30 template. And you're like, okay, what are we going to do now? We don't have a template anymore. This way, you can make it up at the job on a per job and per event basis on your own and save some money. And so I don't know. I kind of set this up beforehand to make sure we had enough time. So we've got a pattern bit that you can buy. There's a couple different manufacturers of the pattern bits. We like to use the smaller, this is a little Makita router. Hitachi's got a little router. Bosch has got a little router. I think that's the one that I have. It's called the Colt. And so you basically will start it in one spot. You plunge it down. And usually your first plunge cut, you only want to do so that it goes into the oak about 1/4 inch. Your first cut. And so you'll start it in the center, you'll bring it in, and then you'll cut it around, and so then now you've got 1/4 inch thick cut around the border for your vent. And then you want to cut it at least 3 more times all the way down till you get to the bottom of the plywood. And then once you get to that point, I think I can cut this one once more. We wish we could do that on all the jobs, get the dust out that easy, right, guys? Usually we got a sweatshirt in the vent hole so the dust doesn't come out and get us in the face. You know. And then you can get one of these corner chisels. I've got a handheld corner chisel. You pull it into the corner. It fits right in. And like I said, you can make it up on a per job basis for all the vents because there's so many different types and styles. It's just a quick and easy way to make a template, to do a flush mount vent that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do it, and it just helps you to do a better job. I mean, if you're good, some guys are real good and they can take that fine tool, trace out the vent and cut out the lines with the fine tool, but this kind of eliminates any of the air factor in it.